here from Rain Country. God is good all the time. And I'm here to talk about 10 things that you can start growing in your backyard garden this year. Things that are going to be fairly simple, provide a lot of nutrition and calories to get you through some hard times. Now, before I get started, let me just say, you got to keep in mind that what I'm sharing are things that I grow, and we live in Washington State on the very cool, wet side of the state. So the things that we can grow, the types of things that we can grow are going to vary to people who live in drier climates or much warmer climates than we do. So just keep that in mind, but also understand that most of these things, even if you can't grow the same variety as us, you can find something in that family that might grow far better in your own climate. And the other thing I want to preface this on is that I'm not talking about herbs today. I'm talking specifically about foods. Not that herbs can't be used as food, but since I already have quite a number of videos out on the type of herbs that I recommend people look into growing. And what I'll do is link to the most recent one I have out so far in the description box down below so you can see the list of herbs. But just like with any list, understand I'm just giving you a list to work off of. It doesn't mean you have to grow everything or have everything that I'm listing off. I just like giving people a lot of options. So these aren't necessarily in order of importance, and the importance is also going to depend on you. So just understand, I just wrote these down as they came to mind. Now, the first one I have on here is potatoes. Generally speaking, for most people, potatoes are very, very easy to grow. And if you live in a warmer climate, you also may find that sweet potatoes are going to be easy to grow. If you live in a climate like ours, it's going to take some extra work to be able to get some sweet potatoes. I have tried before. I got some little teeny tiny minuscule ones, but at least I tried. The good thing about sweet potatoes, unlike regular, like your Irish potatoes, yellow potatoes, white potatoes, russets, is that with the sweet potatoes, you can consume the leaves. The one great thing about potatoes is they're going to provide a lot of carbohydrate. Now, we live in a society where carbs are looked at as the enemy, but they shouldn't be seen that way. The reason they're looked at that way is because we already get a lot of carbs in just about everything. But in a very tight situation, potatoes are going to be important. You're going to need those carbs. And so I highly recommend them. And our preferred kind is any yellow type of potato, by the way. And I do like to grow reds, but we still love the yellows best. But the other thing that's really great about potatoes is that there are so many different ways that you can prepare them. It's going to be unlikely you're going to be get that tired of them because they go well with just about anything. You can fry them, you can mash them, you can bake them, you can make hash browns out of them, you can make scallop potatoes. There's so many things you can do with potatoes. And then the next one on my list is actually the number one reason we started growing anything in the first place is tomatoes. While we can get potatoes of all varieties that are really decent potatoes just about anywhere around us, tomatoes are much harder to get and have them be organic and have them actually taste good and actually have flavor to them. So that is why tomatoes became one of the most important things, the very first thing we started growing. And the main reason we built a greenhouse, because where we live, tomatoes do best in a greenhouse. It's just the way it is. You can grow some out in the open, but they do best in a greenhouse. So that is the number one reason why we even have a greenhouse is for tomatoes. And also the hot peppers that I grow, which are the Chinese 5-color, my favorite. I've tried all kinds of different ones. So even though I didn't include them in this list of 10, they are still one of my favorite things to grow. But anyway, tomatoes are something that is a staple in our house. And the reason why is mostly, it's not so much about cutting them up and using them in dishes, using them fresh, Not that we don't like to eat them fresh, because we do, especially right out of the greenhouse, fresh off the vine, so good with a little bit of salt, but because I like to put the tomatoes up for using in all kinds of different sauces. And what you see here are dehydrated, pureed, and then dehydrated tomatoes that I flaked up. I do not powder them, I flake them. They're going to take up a little bit more room in your food pantry than powdered, but I don't have to worry about them turning to a brick once I've opened them and started working through them. And that's why I flake them up, but still storing them like this rather than canning them like I used to do. I think I can put about 4 jars of canned tomatoes into 1 jar. This is just a guess. So, but I think it's a pretty good guess. It could be more, it could be a little less, but I would estimate about 4 quarts of canned tomatoes, pureed and then canned, dehydrated up, would fit into 1 quart. So that saves me a lot of room in storage, and they're super easy to use. So besides using them in chili and sometimes adding to soups, I use them to make homemade barbecue sauce, and then all of my red Italian sauces for lasagna, spaghetti, ravioli, and pizza. And then the next one on the list I have are green beans. So I have green beans put up in 2 different forms. I will say, when it comes to the green beans, canning them is my favorite. Here's the thing about green beans is, just like with anything, you got to find the variety that's going to grow best for you. And what I find for us is the Scarlet and Sunset runner beans work best. They just are high producers, and I love the fact that they are dual purpose. So the thing is, with beans, you can grow any kind of green bean can be a dual purpose bean, but not any kind of bean can work good as a green bean. I also like to grow purple beans along with these, and they are a great green bean, but when allowed to fully dry, they make a great dry bean that you can use to make your chilies. They are also pretty easy to grow without a greenhouse, no matter where you live, especially if you get the right variety. Like lima beans, I've tried several different types of lima beans. They don't do well here, but the runner beans do best for us. The thing is you can have it as a vegetable, the green bean, but then once you get enough of those harvested up and in my case canned, then for me, the rest get left until they're fully dried. And then they, like I said, they can be used to make chilies and other types of bean dishes. Okay, so next would be your different types of squashes and zucchini, because they also can be used in many different ways. Like right here, this is the number one way I do put up my zucchini, is I like to dice it up and then dehydrate it. This gets added to so many different things. I can even powder it up and add it to breads and various dishes, but mostly this is how I use it. It gets used in soups, in sauces, in so many things. I can just throw that in there for the added nutrition. And then pumpkin, you can dehydrate it and powder it up, just like with the tomatoes. I don't can pumpkin because it takes up so much room, but cooking it, drying it, and powdering it takes up so little space and is so easy to use for many different things. You can use it as a flavoring. You can use it to add nutrition to food. You can even use it to make pumpkin cookies, pumpkin pies, and pumpkin bread, and whatever else sounds good to you. And so squash, no matter what variety you grow, I've done similar things with butternut squash and spaghetti squash, but the many uses, because of the mild flavor, it's something that you can incorporate into a lot of things and then get a lot of the nutrients out of that as well. And everybody can find some kind of squash that will grow well for them in their area. At least I think everybody can. So finding the right variety of pumpkin, or the right variety of butternut, or the right variety of whatever, of zucchini even. And then another one I have, and this is going to be another one that isn't necessarily, I don't know that everybody can grow, but here rhubarb grows for us quite well. And it is the nice thing about rhubarb, it is a perennial, so it'll just keep coming back. You don't have to replant it every year. Eventually you do have to dig them up and split them up and then either give the parts away because they can get so big, they can take up a lot of space, or just start new plants off of them. But rhubarb is also, it's a vegetable actually. Because it's so often used in sweet things, people a lot of times equate it with a fruit, but it is actually a vegetable. But because it's highly nutritious, it is a perennial and grows really well for us. To me, that is one of the top 10 things that I believe people in my type of climate should have on their list of things that they can grow in their backyard. Now, the other things like the zucchini, the beans, the pumpkin, these are all annual, so you do have to plant them every year. But anytime you have a bumper crop, you can put all that stuff up, and if the next year you don't get a lot, they don't do as well, you got enough put up for 2 or 3 years, you're covered. Oh, and one more thing I wanted to say is I'm not talking about fruit trees today. Fruit trees I think is something that would be good, but not everybody can plant a fruit tree in their backyard. So we're talking about people of, whether you have limited space, you're just trying to have a little backyard garden, that's kind of mostly what we're looking at. But you can grow berries in a backyard garden. Even a berry shrub, such as blueberries or currants, can do really well in a backyard garden. But strawberries take up very little room, and that can be a really good option for a lot of people to grow strawberries. In fact, all of my strawberries now I grow in pots. For some reason, my strawberries never do well in the ground, but if I grow them in pots, they do great for me. The bigger the pot though, the better they do. But they can even grow quite well, at least in the first couple years, in just small pots. And then I do recommend transplanting them into bigger pots if you're going to grow them in pots eventually after a couple of years. But yeah, there's all kinds of great berries you can grow. And again, this is going to depend on your area. Around here, berries such as blackberries, raspberries, and whatnot typically do very, very well. Currants do excellent. Blueberries do well. But you may have berries in your climate that will do better for you than what we grow. All right, let's get into some greens. So we're looking at things like your lettuces. Lettuces are super easy to grow. Kale, collards, especially if you live in a warmer climate, collards are a really great way to get some highly nutritious greens. Usually the darker the green, the better. That's going to typically mean they have more minerals in them than your lighter greens, like, your iceberg lettuces and whatnot. But typically these are pretty easy to grow without taking up a ton of space. And along with that, you could include your dandelion greens and your nettle. A lot of people don't think of those as vegetables, but they can be used as vegetables and have a ton of nutrition. So what you're wanting to look at for your backyard gardens, especially if you have limited space, are things that can grow really well, but also be very high in nutrition with limited work. Now, next on my list is carrots, and that can be a tricky one depending on where you live. Again, finding the right variety that's going to do well for you. And I've struggled with carrots off and on. I have a good year, I have a bad year, a good year, a bad year. The best year I had was the year I just left a bunch of carrots in the ground, let them reseed, let those seeds fall to the ground. And that was the best year I ever got, was that following year, is the seeds that fell from the ones I had left in the ground and had then gone to seed. So it was 2 years later. Best harvest of carrots I've ever had was from those. And I don't even think it was so much about the variety of carrots as it was the fact that I let them do that more naturally and then had the more acclimated seed already ready to go. And you'll find that pretty common in a lot of your different, whether it be herbs or fruits or vegetables, acclimated seed is going to be very important. But for a lot of people, carrots are super easy to grow. It's just that, like I said, sometimes it's just finding the right way that's going to work for you and the right variety. Now, another one I highly recommend are peas, but specifically snow peas. Now, why would I recommend snow peas over your shelling peas? I love shelling peas, but shelling peas are a lot more of a pain in my personal opinion, unless you really like them that way, because you do have to shell them because the the outside pod is pretty tough. You know, it's kind of harder to eat that. You can, but it's just going to be very fibrous and, you know, it's just not great. Whereas snow peas can be eaten whole. And so and they're best when they're flat and the peas haven't filled out, but you're getting a lot more, in my personal opinion, you're getting a lot more nutrition because you're eating the pod and the pea inside as well. And so these are dehydrated snow peas. It's not actually my favorite way to put up snow peas, but I do like having some of these on hand. They are good for adding to soups like the green beans, but for the snow peas, they're not great for canning, but they're really great for fermenting and for freezing. So I typically will freeze them in even smaller jars than this to add to my stir fries and other Asian type dishes. But I love snow peas. They're easy to grow. They love cooler climates like ours. So if you live in a hot climate, snow peas probably is not going to be your best option. You're going to want to go with maybe a shelling pea. But because they grow so easily here, and I can get quite a bit from it, I can also get lots of seed to grow for the next year or to even feed to my chickens. They love those peas once they're fully formed, and I just feed them those when I get tons and tons of them. Because one thing about snow peas is that if you let them get that mature, unlike your regular shelling pea or garden pea, the peas inside don't taste very good. They have a very dry bean kind of taste rather than that sweeter taste of your garden shelling peas. But they are definitely a staple in my garden. Number 10 is your other root veggies. So things like rutabaga, turnips, and beets, whichever one grows best for you, whichever variety grows best for you. One year I did pretty good. I've done pretty good some years with beets and some years with rutabagas. I haven't yet found a turnip that did super good for us, but the thing about rutabaga that I really like is it has a far more mild flavor than a turnip and a light color, unlike beets. I love beets, but the thing is with beets, you just don't like to add them to everything because they turn everything, unless you're going with a white beet, they turn everything red. Whereas the rutabaga, because of its mild flavor, some people do like to use those as a potato replacement, people that need to stay away from potatoes, maybe because it's in the nightshade family or whatever reasons that potatoes aren't the best option. Rutabaga can be a good option because of its mild flavor. You can treat it very much like a potato. But the other thing about all of these root vegetables like this, and this includes your carrots, is all the greens on them are also edible. So you can, either cook up the greens, like the turnips, the rutabaga, the beet greens, and some people like to do that, just like stir fry them. Or you can do like what I do, and that would be to dehydrate all those greens, including the ones from the carrots, and then put them in a greens blend where I can use that to add nutrition to just about any meal that I make. It can go in the sauce of anything, it can go in the soup, it can go in the gravy, it can go into the stuffings, and it can go into your hamburger patties, your meatloaves, and your casseroles, all kinds of different things. And so that's what makes those kind of root veggies, unlike the potato, better, but like the sweet potato, is that you can also use the greens. So you're getting a lot more out of that produce than you would out of just a potato or even a tomato. Now, let me stress again that this list of 10 types of foods is just a jumping off point. I could go on and on about so many more things that you can grow, and you may find that there's something on this, like maybe instead of rhubarb, because you don't like rhubarb or it's not going to grow well for you, maybe you would rather grow something like cauliflower or broccoli in place of that. So this list really needs to be tailored to you. I just wanted to give you some ideas to consider according to what I really like to grow, some of my very favorite things. Now, any other thoughts, ideas? What are your favorite things to grow? What would you highly recommend to somebody, especially someone that's getting new into gardening, or someone who has limited space and they want to start adding to their food supply by growing their own food? Please put your suggestions in the comments down below. And thanks for watching. Take care and God bless.